Our next presenter is somebody you saw yesterday. He's a longtime Conlang list member. Were you there? Were you there from the beginning?
No.
No. Okay. Well, long time anyway. Yes. And he's the current Lord of Instrumentality. Anyway, and he's a fine Conlanger. He's created certainly some of my favorite languages, and he's here to talk to us today about. Yeah. He's an absolute specialist in this. But anyway, as soon as he gets up and running, Henrik Theiling.
Yes, hello. I'm going to talk today about my thoughts about the language with adverbials. And actually, this topic came up yesterday, although maybe you have noticed it in one of the talks in the morning, which was about verbs a lot. And so my talk is going to be in... Oh, I shouldn't walk from there to there all the time.
Yeah, it's okay. Now it's okay. You can.
Okay.
You just don't go too far that way. Then you're out of the.
Okay.
But here it's okay.
So I will present it in three parts. The first part will be a short introduction on Eng-Lang's, what they're called now, engineered languages, which is one type of doing conlanging. And the second part will be NetLang motivation for what I'm going to do. So I will have a look at a few phenomena, basically from English and Mandarin Chinese. And then in the last part, this is the fun part, I'm going to introduce some of the structures I have derived before from in the NetLang motivation. So, engineered languages. First of all, what is this? There are several ways of going to getting to conlanging. One is to explore possibilities of languages, like you just want to know how grammar works or phonology or something like this. This is what I wanted to do when I was a little kid, when I had my grammar books. I read this amazing grammar of Finnish, and of course no one around me knew that it was amazing, but I did. And so I started to do my own languages, only for the purpose of exploring this grammar, actually. And then it was also some kind of thought experiment. This is also often the case. And when you do this, there is a tendency to get extreme. That's at least what I experienced. You want to have something very regular, or on the other hand, very irregular, whatever, or something highly reduced, almost no grammar, whatever you want to call this, or load anything on this conlang, whatever you can think of. So it tends to be extreme, I think. And many of the work I've seen on Eng-Langs are actually very abstract. So you typically read some theoretical monograph about the language. This needn't be the case, but these are also, well, this is what I think is kind of typical for languages like this. And then, yeah, I already told you I had great fun with reading Finnish grammars and thinking about it, so this was for personal fun. And with this respect, I think there is no doing wrong, because, yeah, you just do what you want to do. You explore language, and you can do whatever you want. Yeah, often you explore linguistic corner cases, or want to test what human brains are capable of doing. I have an example. And what is also often the case is that one motivation to do this is to create an international auxiliary language. And then the goal is typically to be an easy language. So in this respect, this is also extreme. You want to be easiest. And of course, there is different easiness. So this can lead to heated debates, actually. And what I'm going to focus today on is, oh, I shouldn't put the preposition in the last sentence positions. We had this yesterday. Okay, I'm going to talk about an abstract personal thought experiment. And the design goals in this language will be to oh no, sorry. Yes, one example of endlines is If Will by John Quijada, which many of you will know, even personally from former LCCs. And its design goals are to find and manifest all possible categories that can be there in the language. And it's very refreshing to read the grammar, actually. And the words are typically very short, have a high semantic density, and to achieve this, the phonology is very complex. Even so complex that there is a simplification called Ishlak. I'm sorry. Should have written it down. So. Also one design goal is high degree of precision and a low degree of ambiguity. And this language tries to test what the human speech center may be able to do. And people have been trying to learn this, I think, since it was released. This is an example. This is the native script, which is a featured. Yeah, it's complicated. You have to read it. It's not your standard script. It's a great read on its own. And then this is the rendering in Latin letters, which I won't try to pronounce. If anyone wants to try, I can give the microphone away for a second. And it means, on the contrary, it means, this is a very broad notion, but it means something like, on the contrary, I think it might turn out that the rugged mountain range trails off at some point. This is 2 words. Okay, and the second extreme example is a little bit older. It's by Jeffrey Henning. It's called Fifth. And the idea is completely different. The idea was to explore a language that an alien race might talk, which uses stack-based grammar. Those who were in contact with computer science might know what this means. I will show an example in a second. And it's like a 4th programming language. It's still a natural language, but it's supposed to be very different from human languages. And this is one example. You have to read. The English gloss is like this, vertically. So in the sentence, the words are simply put in sequence, and they modify a stack on these sides. There are 2 elements here and one element here. And typical verbs push themselves onto the stack. So the first word, hen, pushes itself on the stack. Then a typical adjective modifies the topmost element. So the next one is an adjective which modifies hen, and then you get fat hen. And the same with articles. They work similarly. They take the topmost element, attach to it, and you get the fat hen. Then in this example, you have another noun which pushes itself. So you get 2 stack elements, the lower of which is the fat hen, and the top one is now box. And now you've seen what happens with the. It attaches to the box on the top element. And this preposition also does the same, takes the top element, attaches itself to it. So you have now 2 stack elements, the fat hen and on the box. And in the last line, you get a verb, a transitive verb, in this case is, which takes the 2 topmost elements and combines them by putting itself in between. And then in this example, the sentence ends. And actually, you can do this sentence in various ways. Doesn't matter so much as long as at the end you get this topmost element. This is the sentence. So this works a little bit different from human languages, although some actually seem to be strangely close to this. Okay, this was my 2 examples for endlines. And now I'm going to do the second part, the netline motivation for what I'm going to do. First, what are adverbials? I'm sure you know, but I will tell you anyway. So adverbials, modify sentences So take the sentence, I eat. You can add an adverbial again. You get another sentence, I eat again. And you can do this many times. You can add another adverbial today and get another sentence, I eat again today. So let's explore my eating habit. We're at this topic. And to introduce some of the possible adverbials in English. First of all, we've already seen normal lexical adverbs. So this is an adverb that you would find in a lexicon. Then there is, of course, this prominent class of derived adverbs. You take an adjective and add a derivation ending, and you get an adverb. I eat quickly. I eat often. I eat quickly. And then you can also have something like a prepositional clause. So you have a preposition over here. And then you get something like I eat with joy. And you can transpose this to something else, a participle phrase, which is then I eat using a spoon. This is some verbal thing, and this is some nominal thing, and you can put these together to form a participle phrase that can be used as an adverbial to modify this, this eating. And then finally, you have something like an adverbial clause, which is the most complex structure in English. And this is something like another sentence plus some word that introduces the adverbial clause and makes it able to attach this to the other sentence. So, yeah, I think you get the idea of the problem is. And our design goal is to make try to make these the same, so we only have one structure, something like a slim grammar. And because the stuff on the in this line seems to be reasonably simple and expressive, I have chosen this one for the experiment. So we're going to use something like participle phrases, at least this would be the closest English equivalent, to try to transform these into something like this. So again, back to my eating habit. I eat often. Well, this is a little bit strange, but you could say, I eat repeating the meal, something like this. And then you have this typical structure with a participle and some normal. And I eat quickly, you could say, I eat using great speed. Okay? I eat with joy, you could change to I eat having joy, it's also the same structure. This was already in the right form. And in the last example, you have to rephrase a little bit because this structure is actually quite complex already, but you could say something like, I eat telling stories. And now we've all translated the adverbials on this side into this very simple structure with a adverbial part and some nominal part here. And when you look closely, something like using and having, well, it's some kind of a generic verb that's used in English because, well, there's no good way to say this. There are other ways to say this, maybe with a little bit more, well, a little bit more elegantly. But, well, you can use your fantasy and make up maybe other variants that might be more interesting, like I eat enjoying the food, something like this. And there's another problem that I'm not going to address in this talk, because the last structure with the whole sentence will give you the possibility to construct much more complicated things than you could possibly do with a participle clause. So I eat while the waiter pours me wine may be a little bit too complicated to what I'm going to do in this talk. So we might need more structure. Maybe in a year or so at the next LCC4. So let's see what NATLANGs also do, because there is some strange non-correspondence between languages. In English, for example, you would say he likes to sing. And, well, I use a different verb now, And because I don't like to sing, someone else has to, so he likes to sing. In English, you would use an auxiliary verb, while in German, you would use an adverb. Gerne is an adverb. So, well, while these mean the same, they are not the same structure. Still, in this talk, we're going to try to have a very broad notion of adverbials in order to unify the structure. And so we could transform, for example, the English sentence, or both of them, into something like, he sings having joy. And also in English, there's a possibility to express almost the same thing with different structures, like, back to myself, I sing reluctantly, I sing with reluctant, I am reluctant to sing. Totally different structures. And again, the goal will be to make these all the same, and again, have a broad notion of adverbials to achieve this. So for example, we could say, I sing lacking joy, something like this. And now, one step towards this goal can be found in examples from Mandarin Chinese. And as you can see, I'm giving you the Chinese, which I hate not to find in linguistic papers. I read papers about Mandarin Chinese, and they give this sample sentence with a simple Latin gloss. I really don't like this. And then they don't even put the accents for the tones. So I will be a good example I will give good examples for you with a nice Chinese on top with the tones here, so you can speak after me. 他砍树. No, it was wrong. It was the fourth tone. So this way I put them there, so I can read them. 他看书. He reads a book, and it's this is the verb in the middle. And you can add an adverb, which will be put in front of the verb. So 他常常看书 would be he often reads a book. And auxiliaries in Mandarin basically work exactly the same. They precede the verb. Like in this sentence, it's the same base sentence, but we change the adverb and substitute it to like, which is 喜欢. So 他喜欢看书 would be he likes to read a book. And when you compare these, 他常常看书 and 他喜欢看书, you will see that the structure is very similar. So it's you have a hard time distinguishing what these words are really in Chinese. And especially in this case, we've seen that German and English do it differently. So maybe from an English point of view, you would say 喜欢 is an auxiliary, while if you come from German, you might think it's something like gerne, an adverb. You cannot really see. So what does this mean? It means it's great. We can do this in our online. And then another thing I'm going to use is a structure also from Mandarin Chinese. It's called serial verb construction. And what is this? Well, it's a sequence of verb phrases, basically, nothing more. It's just a stacked sequence of verb phrases. And it's often unpredictable what exactly happens to the meaning there, because you don't have markings what goes on semantically. But I found it strangely obvious to understand. I don't know why, but I found it really very intuitive, actually. And in many cases, it's a sequence of events. So something like I get on the plane, sit down from Peking to Shanghai, something like this. But often it also adds some descriptions to actions. And the involved syntax and morphological marking is typically very, very reduced. In Mandarin Chinese, there is no morphological marking at all. You only have the sequence. And even in English, there are some examples. For example, please go get some coffee would be a simple example of a serial verb construction. And in Mandarin, it's easier to give examples because much of the grammar is based on this. So, for example, this sentence, 他回来看朋友. So you have 3 verbs in a row. Hui means to return, lai means to come, and kan means to see, which in this case is used for to visit. So 他回来看朋友. This is a serial verb construction, which then means he came back to visit friends. And Mandarin allows more complex things, and this is where we are approaching what the adverbials again. It allows serial verb constructions with verb-object sequences. So, for example, 他用筷子. This means he uses chopsticks. There's a verb. 用 means to use. 筷子 means chopsticks. And another sentence, 他吃饭 means he eats, basically. This character means cooked rice, which is generalized to mean food. And because Chinese doesn't really like single verbs, you often get combinations of verb and object to translate to something, to a single verb in English. So this would translate as he eats. Literally, he eats cooked rice. And you can combine these into one sentence, just put them in a row, and you get 他用筷子吃饭, which literally means he used chopsticks, eat cooked rice. And what you get out of this is something like an adverbial phrase in English, meaning he eats with chopsticks. And this actually looks very similar to what I'm going to do in the third part. And so this is a good basis looking at Mandarin Chinese. And there are longer examples. I made this up, so I hope this works. If there's any Mandarin speaker in the audience who wants to contradict, please do. I think it's a correct sentence. There's a sequence of 4 verb phrases. One of them is an adjective, adverb. 2 we're modifying phrases with the verb and an object, and the last one is the main verb. So 在 means to be at, 在家 means to be at home. 常常, we already had that, is an adverb, means often. 用筷子 means to use chopsticks, and 吃饭 means to eat. So the whole sentence would be 他在家常常用筷子吃饭, and it means at home he often eats with chopsticks. And you can see that there's no marking between these verbial or nominal verbial things, and it's just a sequence of verb nominal phrases. And I will call these, of course, adverbials. So I will get something out of this structure. And the design goal is to use this kind of serial verb construction as the only sentence structure, together with adverbials. And the only thing we have to get rid of now is this subject, because that's another structure. We don't want it. I only want a serial construction like this. So now I will talk about types of words, because there's some other detail I haven't told you yet, which I will introduce now. Let's see what kind of words there are. For example, in English, in the lexicon, you will find nouns and verbs and adjectives and pronouns, determinants, possibly many more. And then if you reduce yourself to looking only at words, I informally phrase it like this, that you could possibly count. Well, then you will get the open lexical classes, as they are called. And in English, these would be nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And in Mandarin, you only have nouns and verbs. You have something like special verbs that act like adjectives in English, but arguably, these are also verbs. And then there are languages which are disputed to only have one of these classes, but I think for natural languages, there is no proof for this, only some suggestions that it might be possible. And still, I will show you how difficult it can be to determine word classes in Mandarin, basically because you don't have any morphological marking on the words. the only structure you have is word order. So for example, you know this sentence already, 他用筷子 means he uses chopsticks. And well, if he uses them, he has them. 他有筷子. And now you can use this word to do something very strange. When I read this sentence for the first time, I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. 筷子很有用. This means chopsticks have use. And when you look at this, it makes no sense at first, because you have a typical verb here. You can see it's a verb from this sentence, and then put another verb in the object position. So it means chopsticks are very useful, but the question is whether this is really a verb, or what is this? So it's quite difficult to pinpoint what the word classes in Mandarin, even in a sentence where they are used, really are. And so, is this clearer in English? Well, you might know this sentence, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Well, these two words aren't really easy to pinpoint exactly unless you have a whole sentence where they occur. In this case, it's a noun and a verb, but here, well, not so much. No, let me see. Time flies like a noun. No, it's super, of course, yeah.
I just got the appropriate gloss.
Yeah, it's when you see these sentences right next to each other, you get confused, right? So in isolation, it is totally unclear whether flies is a noun or verb, and it's similar with the word to like. It only becomes clear from context. So it seems if you do this in a conlang, you might actually very well do something like one open lexical class, because in a sentence you can, well, it works. So this is what we're going to do. We will have only one open lexical class, and I will call this substantives, for lack of a better word. In German, it's a different thing, because this would mean nouns, but in English, it might work. So this will be part 3. This was the introduction in NetLines, and we can now get the job done, actually. So I will give a short summary. What we want to do is to express every bit of information by an adverbial. Oops. Yeah, this one is very close to this one. Okay, anyway. And then we will combine the bits of information we give by adverbials using a serial verb construction. And remember, there's one thing left we have to do. We have to get rid of the subject. And we might need a little bit more structure. And the other thing I introduce is a language that only has one open lexical class. And to spice things up, I thought I would give you some derivation with subjects, suffixes like in English, likelihood or something like this. But if you are really hardcore, you might try to even get rid of this. It depends on what your design goals are for this talk. It's easy because you can introduce, words more easily. Otherwise, the structures might be too clumsy or something. I don't know. It was easy for me, so I included this. And then, well, the phonology, this sketch is actually a theoretical sketch that's lying around with me for several years now. And now I had to give a talk on it. And there was no phonology, so I would just take the standard off-the-shelf phonology and give you some examples. And so one of the design goals is to make this language good for a presentation when you're actually too late. So for the substantives, we're doing something like this. The first letter will be p, t, or k, and then the first syllable will be pa, pe, pi, ko, pu, ta, te, ti, ko, pu, ka, ke, ki, ko, pu. And then you can add a sequence of more syllables, whatever number you want. using one of these consonant clusters and R, E, and U. So the other syllables have a reduced vowel system, and only the first one has 5 vowels. So yeah, this is what I call a standard off-the-shelf presentation-ready phonology. So these are some examples, very simple ones, but also Pamba or Pandakru or Tar, or Parsa. Which reminds me, I haven't mentioned Finnish yet, which I will do now. And Parsa in Finnish is asparagus. So this is a mandatory mention of Finnish in this talk. So, and for the suffixes, we're doing something very similar. We're going to use these initial consonants, and the other stuff is the same. And there are more examples here. For example, now tar, 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 tar. Okay. So you can actually, this is the idea, you can put these together, right? You could have tar, 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 which is the idea of this phonology. Anyway, this phonology has some interesting properties already, because I chose the initial consonant to be disjoint between the two sets of words. You know immediately when new morphemes start. For example, Tinda can also only be a substantive, and Tina must be a substantive plus an ending. And well, you already know that there is Parsa. And Parsa Nandu would be Parsa and Nandu. And Tina Samumbu would be Ti Narsa Mumbu. This even works for words without spaces in between. So Tinda Parsa Nanda Tindar Samumbu Tina would break down like this. So this is a self-segregating morphology I created. This is the term for these properties. And why I'm doing this? Well, I like it. There are some examples now. Pizza, that shows, which means in a adverbial sense being a pizza, and in a nominal sense, pizza. And then there's some loan from French, bourguignon, which means bœuf bourguignon. And yeah, there are some more words I will need in the examples. Kekla means wine, Pitru is Peter, Parsi is, well, Mary, the closest rendering. And then there is some pronoun, to, ki, fa, and I left out the adverbial, but maybe it means being me, being you, something like this. It depends on your interpretation. And kengi means to eat or eating, the process of the eating. And there is another word, polti, which is a past participle in the translation. It means something like ingested or process of being ingested. And then there's kolpatri, meaning movement, moving, something like this. And kolnu, which is quick or high speed. And then an adverbial. Well, I constructed this like the participle clauses in English, or phrases. An adverbial is a verbal and a nominal. And to mark this plus, I will modify the nominal. So the substantives start with to k, and when they are used in nominal sense, they will start with s and or whatever. This is, of course, I hope it's obvious. It's just the same point of articulation, and then from a stop to a fricative. There's maybe some more going on here, but that's detail. So, for example, polpi, is it polpo? Polti. Okay, that's a mistake. Polti means ingested, and folpi means, yeah, the process of being of ingestion, of being ingested, something like this. Then to means I, and nominally it will be so. And quick is kalnu or halnu. Pitru may also be fitru, which might even be more typical because Peter will probably more often be used in a nominal sense than in a verbial sense. And Mary, it's also the same modification as Farsi in the nominal form. And there's some example what I'm going to do. I will write these in one word. We could do differently, but I like it. So, polti pizza would combine into polti pizza. This is an adverb which means pizza being eaten. Eaten pizza, something like this. And then, some other example, kengi to, into one word would, one adverb would become kengi so. This means I eat.
Why not I am eating?
Because there are two different verbs for eat. There's polti, meaning in the passive sense, to be eaten, and kengi is ingesting, which is the active. So you have polti, pizza, is pizza being eaten, and kengi, so is I eat. And then something more typical for an adverb, maybe a quick movement becomes kalnu pol patri, means quickly. So this is enough for the first sentence. I told you I'm simply sequencing the adverbs, right? So this is just a sequence of these three things. Kalnu pol patri, kengi so polti pizza. And it means quick move, so quickly, I ingest, and the pizza is ingested. And this would become I eat pizza quickly. So, wait, we have to get rid of this subject, but I think I already mentioned this already. How this happened? Well, there are two verbs for to eat. One which marks the subject of eating, and one which marks the object. So there's eating A, eaten B. From an English point of view, this would mean there are active and passive substantives. But of course, if you don't have this, this is a notion that is specifically typical or sensible for transitive verbs, of course. So it might not make sense to use these terms in this language. And this means we will do this for all transitive or ditransitive or high valency verbs. So, for example, Peter gives the book to Mary will be split up into all the three roles. So there's a verb for taken book, someone who gives, giving, Peter, and something like arriving at Mary, or maybe you could also have someone who takes, taking Mary. This would also work. And by this, all the transitive and high valency verbs will be broken down into only intransitive verbs. So this language will have no transitive verbs. And I'm talking about verbs. Well, you could ask whether this makes sense. I think for a language like this, because there's, to my knowledge, no natural language equivalent or analog, there are just no good words. So I'm using verbial and nominal, but you could use other terminology. For example, well, I'm using this, verbial and nominal. So leave Germany, this is what you have in mind in the direct glosses of the words. But you could also say it's a participle in a noun phrase, something like this, leaving Germany, or maybe a preposition and a noun, so the process of changing P to F changes a noun into a preposition, or maybe a verb into a preposition, whatever. You could also think of it as a case marker, like in Finnish. Oh, there's another example from Finnish. I think I've cited in Finnish for this talk. Saksasta. Sta is the ending for marking a movement from somewhere, from out of Germany, this means. Or you may, in the terminology of all noun, which was maybe within us, I don't know, which was mentioned yesterday, you could say, well, one of the forms is the role marker, and one is the argument. So something like this, Germany, source. It's basically, oh yes, and there's another thing you could say. One usage is transitive because it has one argument, namely the other part of the adverb, which is the intransitive form. So all these terms might be appropriate for the two forms of the substantives in this language. So, whatever. And then derivation, I will show you how this works. It's simply point is a substantive plus a substantive. And again, I want to mark this plus. And I will do this by changing the initial consonant here. And this is the change. So P will be M, T will be N, K will be V. Okay. V. You know why? Okay. Yes, and Finnish this actually exists. Yeah. Yes, and one explanation might be k nach n, anga, and from nga maybe nach to something like ra, ara, from ra to wa to ha to va, something like this. But it's possible, it's not unprecedented. So I just didn't want to have nga in contrast to nga in the language, so I chose to obfuscate it. So anyway, this is so there are three forms of each of the substantive. So pizza can be pizza or mitza, depending on how it's used. And wine can be kekla, hekla, or bekla, however, in whatever sense it is used. For example, kekla kondu, kekla bondu would be red wine. So the wine is modified with red, and then you get red wine. And there are two other initials that were allowed for suffixes, which are L and R, and these are used for some grammatical markers. So you have another category for suffixes that are not related to substantives. For example, la is a generalizer, and you can take some concrete stuff like water and put la on it and get something like liquid. So tengu la would be liquid, and tengu is water. So some more structure. I think I have some more minutes left here, okay? I love evidence mood particles. Many of my conlangs have evidence mood particles. So this conlang will also have evidence mood particles. And not even have them, but each sentence will start with one. So what are evidence mood particles? Informally, it's a class of words that clarifies the purpose of the utterance or the viewpoint of the speaker. For example, why did he say that? This is an answer such particles would, this is, an answer, a question that such particles would hopefully answer. Or where does the information come from? These are some examples. You could add a P in front. This would mean it's experience. The speaker says this because he has experienced this. Or turnu is hearsay. This is probably a good thing for politicians to use. Pumbi would be an interrogative, which is very close to Japanese ka, which also has a particle for marking interrogatives, like many languages have. Then there's torturpa, which would express a wish. Then there's peltu, a declaration, like I pronounce you man and woman, something like this. And kilta would be intuition, korki, instinct. And to know the difference here, you can go to my webpage. I have a whole abstract in the Tsangai language, where this is simply ripped off. Because I've thought about this so long, I thought no need to do more. So, for example, we have to correct the first example, which needs a P. P is experience. So, P kal hol patri kengiso polti pizza, sorry. And this would mean experience marker, quick move, I ingested pizza. And this means my experience is that I eat pizza quickly. So, and some more examples, what you can do with this, for example, to translate something like please, you could use pel tu kirsuso, which means I declare that I am asking. I hereby ask something like this. Pel tu kirsu. So. And actually Chinese does something like this. It uses qing, just qing. For example, please sit down is qing zuo. I find this very concise. And it's also, yeah, it's polite. And something else, so a question marker and then ingesting it should be, means, yeah, what would you like to eat or drink? No, that's not right. Would you like to eat or drink anything? So my time is up. May I go on for a little while?
Yes, go ahead. You're near the end.
Yeah. So you can see that the object isn't even mentioned because when you have a question mark and then a verb, active verb asking whether it's something, whether you ingest anything, then it would mean would you like to eat or drink anything. And you can also use the passive verb to do something like this. For example, kumbi polti sengu la ulti. And this breaks down to a question marker. The ingested verb should have the ending here because it's a different verb. Then tengula is the generalized water, liquid. And another question suffix which. So this means which liquid is being ingested. And this would mean what would you like to drink? And you can, this is an important sentence when you're at the restaurant. It means, I'll have a pizza, please. And it breaks down to pel tu kirsuso, which is, I declare, I'm asking. My instinct is that the pizza is being eaten. Well, my gut tells me, yeah. So evident mood markers, as you can see here, can also mark the start of clauses inside longer clauses. So this is actually a substructure. It's not serial verb construction anymore. Actually, it's a serial clause construction because there's also no marker here. And the new clause is clearly marked by this evidence mood marker. So we have a second function of this marker. So this is lesson 1. I won't go through the whole thing. But yeah, you could imagine a sample dialogue to test your conlang, what you can do. So Peter and Mary are standing in front of a restaurant. Peter asks Mary, do you want to go to this restaurant? Yeah, let's go in. And they go in and sit at the table. The waiter comes. What would you like to drink? Red wine and water, please. So I will have to drive? Mary sighs. Only water for me, please. And then the dialogue goes on. And I think maybe you can imagine that even this dialogue is possible with the structures I have introduced so far. So I will just do some examples. For example, Torturpa kal pangu falsi pumbi pultu hengi nembi. Is this right? Maybe. Okay, it breaks down to an optative marker, so a wish. A wish is expressed that Mary may listen. This is something like the Mary, comma, something like a vocative. And then a question marker, and asking about what is ingesting place. Yes, right. Whether the ingesting place is being liked. So, please listen, Mary. Is the ingestion place liked? And it means something like, Mary, do you like this restaurant? So, kilta terkafu, or tursu hotzi. This means my intuition is that this is good. This doing is good. So you can see that in this case, do, which would be adverbial in English and German, can be used as an object to terka and form a new adverbial. And then Mary goes on, potur sukotsi, which means let's go inside. So, okay, let's go in. And then, just a short example, this last example I have, you already know this asking, please, it means. And then there is Korki polti hekla wondura sengu. And this breaks down to the instinct marker. Something is being ingested. What's being ingested is red wine. And there's a marker ra at the end, which marks coordination between words. And it marks that this red wine and water is ingested. And just for I don't know, because I thought the words become too long, I wrote a space here. But you can still see that kengu goes to sengu because it's still an argument to this verb or adverbial or transitive or I had a slide with that. So this means I'll have red wine and water, please. So the rest of the dialogue will be homework. I don't know if I even gave you all the vocab. Okay. So the material for the next talk will be something about relative clauses, which is also important, I think. And then more complex adverbial clauses, possession, whatever. Yes, thank you. And if you have any questions.
This question borders on the philosophical, but I was discussing this with Philip.
Okay.
Do you define Chinese characters as words?
No. No, because I can go back to that. There are some examples which are quite clear. I think.
Like Shihuan?
No, Shihuan, more like Kuaizi. Because Kuaizi, Kuai in itself also means chopstick. But it's so short, the phonology has become so short that Kuai in a sentence wouldn't convey the meaning of chopsticks anymore. So some noun marker, which really has no real meaning in this sequence, is added to extend the sound Kuai to Kuaizi to denote chopsticks. And this clearly marks that Z is no word on itself in this sense.
I see your point, but I still think it's really a matter of definition.
Maybe.
I was wondering, had you ever heard of, there was a speculative grammarian article, I don't know who wrote it, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was about, it was a humorous article, but it's about a language that eventually it evolved to such a point that there were no word classes but adverbials.
Yeah, it's interesting, but why are there no languages now that do this? Maybe. I'm interested in this. I haven't read it, actually.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. But,
Yeah, I guess so.
But who knows, maybe we're headed that direction.
Yeah.
We're heading directionally that way. All right, thank you very much.
Silenced you.